Could you repeat that last line, please? The board chair said, voice cutting the low murmur in the glass-walled conference room. You heard him, the CEO answered, lips barely moving. She squared her shoulders, forcing a thin smile. These numbers are private. If you want confirmation, check the list yourself. Across from her, a man in a worn blue shirt placed a folded envelope on the lacquered table and slid it across. You're missing something important, he said, tone level. One by one, heads turned as the envelope was opened and the contents displayed. Her hand hesitated on the armrest, knuckles whitening as the list came into view. She glanced at the assembled board, at the assistants pressed tight against the far wall. Who brought this in here? She demanded, barely above a whisper. A breath heavy carried on the crowded air. Beside her, a young assistant raised her eyes, meeting the chair's gaze. The man beside the folder didn't flinch. She still needs a friend, he said. No one moved. For a moment, time held, 30 people stilled in the fluorescent white of the boardroom, a decision balanced on one fragile sentence. Stay with this story. It started 6 weeks earlier on a Tuesday just past dawn. Louis Bishop's left hand ached from the breakfast rush, but his attention was fixed on the hiss and spit of the grill and the metallic tick of his inhaler in the deep pocket of his jeans. South Dawes Diner ran with the rhythm of tired boots and regular faces, and this Tuesday he'd slipped in early, prepping hash browns and eggs with the certainty of a man who counted every moment. Rent chased him, 11 days and counting, and the least whiff of wheezing, the pinch in his lungs if the kitchen grew too smoky, he disguised with a tilt away from the heat. No one at the counter noticed when he'd stifled a cough 3 minutes before, but he'd noticed. His supervisor frowned at him once already that morning. The bell above the door gave a lazy ring. In swept the kind of woman who made the whole place lose tempo, the crisp click of stiletto heels, silk scarf knotted perfectly, phone tethering her even as she entered the present. Miranda Audley, CEO of Grantham Finance, surveyed the room as if mistaking familiarity for permission. Her gaze snagged on Louis just as the coffee pot was near empty. On another day, he would have slipped into the background, invisible as a shadowed spoon in the silverware drawer. That wasn't today. She set her phone down on the newly wiped counter and gestured at the sun-bleached window. Parked just outside, Louis's car, a battered '97 Corolla, sat askew, frayed bumper held by hope. Is that your car? She called, voice carrying, diner stilled. You drove that onto this property. Louis set the spatula down, eyes flicking to the clock. Yes, ma'am, she gets me here. A snort, half amusement, half irritation. My God, $100 stack of scrap making a statement, huh? You must really need the extra shifts. A couple at booth 3 smirked into their mugs. He reached for a tea towel, dragging it over one wrist, the other hand hidden, unconsciously tapping the outline of the inhaler. Everybody makes their commute, he replied, steady. Her voice cut again. Does it even pass inspection, or is it only here to lower the property values? Runs fine, he said, not pretty but reliable. Reliable, I'd be nervous if my staff had to bet on it. Her smile sharpened. Maybe it's time for something new, ever considered upgrading to something this decade. He folded the towel with painstaking slowness and stacked it beside a tray. Behind her, one of her associates snapped a photo as if collecting proof. He wanted to bite back but only wiped the counter again. I'll get your order started. It wasn't worth it. Her eyes lingered on him a half-beat longer, then she turned, attention elsewhere. The tip of Louis's fingers brushed the ring stitched discreetly into his left pocket. 6 weeks until Sophia's surgery, he had a deadline and he wouldn't risk the job, not for pride. By the time the eggs sizzled under his hand, the room had turned with her, voices amping up. He exhaled, hand betraying a faint tremor. The threat wasn't over, not by a long shot. Night bled into South Dawes as Louis carried Sophia, already half asleep, blue wooden horse in the crook of her small arm, up 3 flights to their apartment. She barely stirred, trust woven in every limp muscle and easy breath. He eased her into bed before she truly woke, and for a moment just watched her, 5-year-old certainty, the kind parents wish could last. He left the nightlight on its lowest setting, then moved to the kitchen, weary from a day spent calculating, not just bills, but oxygen, all the times he'd needed to duck outside to pull breath deeper unseen. Tonight, his lungs felt tighter. Tomorrow still needed him. Louis filled Sophia's lunchbox, careful not to shift the taped note, a routine, ink-faded but message fresh each time. He traced the next day's message on a yellow sticky. "Let someone else go first today, kiddo." Then he paused, pen stilled by her sudden question from the door. "Daddy, are you tired of having to act strong all the time?" Sophia's words hung in the half-light, bigger than her shoulders, the blue horse clutched hard in her palm. Louis looked down at the lunchbox, at his hands, at the way her words pressed into places he kept firmly locked. He set the pen beside the box and forced a careful breath, avoiding her gaze for 3 full seconds. "That's just what grown-ups do, Sophie," he finally said, quiet. "Go back to sleep, okay?" She blinked at him, head cocked. "Will you wish on my horse tonight?" she asked, the words ritual now. He nodded, collecting her hair behind one ear gently. "I'll make sure it gets every wish." After she padded back to her room, Louis set about the routines, dinner leftovers stacked, tomorrow's uniform pressed across the back of the chair, his wife's photo reframed and angled away from the sun. The police badge she'd worn, a case pinched behind glass, sat beneath the TV, and sometimes the old scent of her perfume drifted from the back of his closet, unwelcome but never unwitnessed. Beneath his careful movements, a well-worn trident tattoo faded high under his shirt, never visible beneath Cook's whites. A dozen challenge coins in the bottom drawer, wrapped in an old sock. D never told Sophia the full story, not yet. Before he slept, he scrolled through his phone, checking the calendar. 6 weeks. The surgery, the deadline. He folded his daughter's socks in threes, softly, precisely. Gratitude and exhaustion knotted together. The world behind glass always gleamed warmer than the fluorescent-lit corners Miranda oddly paced nightly. Penthouse 24 floors up, glass gleaming with an indifference meant to be mistaken for optimism. She stood at her desk, phone cradled between shoulder and chin, fingers scrolling an endless, sour thread of emails. Her assistant hovered, clutching the day's schedule and eyeing the untouched lunch on the marble tray. "Reschedule the Portland call. Yes, cut the Europe prep by half. Find someone to sort the contracts now, please." She snapped through her imperatives, staff scattered, efficient, never quite fast enough. She sipped espresso, cool by now, and glanced at an antique jewelry box tucked behind a stack of unread annuals. Inside lay a brass locket with initials she never wore. The time was wrong, purposefully so. A sound behind her, a mother's laugh, recorded then stilled. On the edge of her desk, a medical pamphlet curled at the corner. Understanding Alzheimer's, Early Signs and Family Strategies. She thumbed the paper, then silenced her phone, knocking away a FaceTime missed call. Miranda stood as her assistant brought the day's final brief, a routine dealership report. A sticky note attached, old sedan owner seems stubborn, waiting on approval for removal. "Who?" she demanded, not lifting her eyes. "Short order Cook, been parked there for months, name on receipt, Bishop." She gave a tight shake of her head. "Approve the tow, make sure it's gone before breakfast, and get me the maintenance records. I want this cleaned up." The assistant scrawled a note, careful not to meet Miranda's gaze. "Yes, Miss Audley." A second call, her mother's caretaker, lit the phone. She declined it without reading. For a moment, Miranda let herself breathe, eyes sweeping over the city, the life she'd bought floor by floor, the one regret she couldn't pencil out, the way her mother could no longer remember her last promotion or the color of the scarf she'd worn the day her father died. Empathy filtered in sharp as the city lights, gone as quickly as it came. Her phone vibrated, board member's name glowing bright. She answered with clipped patience. "You want that car moved tonight," the voice insisted. "It'll be gone, I handle my own messes." She set the plan in motion. "Handle it," she said, voice low. "We're done here." The city twinkled at her, 1,000 solutions but never an answer. She watched the twinned world below, alone with her impossible ledger. A week later, the dealership lot swarmed with tension. The new finance clients had arrived early, 2 soft-spoken magnates and 1 linguist from overseas, there to test drive the highest-end model on Grantham's floor. The showroom buzzed with invisible fiefdoms, salesmen in matching suits, a manager watching, Miranda herself in a tailored navy dress. But within minutes, panic unfurled. The visiting dignitary, an elderly man with white hair, had collapsed beside a display car, gasping, unable to articulate pain. For 60 seconds, the best anyone offered was confusion and staccato shouts in English, useless noise. Louis, delivering catered pastries, had been on his way out with a rolling tray. At Sophia's insistence, so she could see the shiny cars, they lingered by the glass door. As chaos broke, he moved forward, unnoticed amidst the suits, narrowing his eyes as the linguist's words sputtered low, the crowd fraying around the fallen man. "Someone call an ambulance," Miranda commanded. The others repeated it like a useless chant. Louis knelt beside the man and gently pressed his wrist, listening to the scratch of unfamiliar syllables. Few caught the way his posture stilled, listening for more than sound. He repeated softly in crisp Czech, "Tell me exactly where it hurts." A hush followed, the man's lips moving, a phrase tumbling out too quick for the crowd. Louis answered again, matching rhythm, asking names, allergies, a sequence. He had been here before, a battlefield hospital, a language learned out of necessity. Miranda's eyes narrowed, arms folding. "You speak Czech," she shot at him. Louis didn't answer. He focused on the patient's pulse, repeating questions, stabilizing the man's breathing, adjusting his legs. A junior salesman gawked, fingers splayed on glass. "How'd you know what he said?" Louis quietly, "He told me about his pacemaker. Needs his meds, lower left pocket." The visiting dignitary struggled up, whispering relief. His assistant fished for pills, offering thanks. Miranda stared, as if reading a language scrawled in invisible ink across Louis's forearm. A minute later, paramedics arrived. The dignitary's hand found Louis's, pressing it twice before he was whisked away. "Probably a fluke," Miranda muttered, voice clipped. "Anyone could guess a patient needs medicine." But the eyes of the young salesman held Louis longer than seemed reasonable. He nodded once, almost bowing. He had seen this before. 20 years ago, when panic filtered through in the same muted tones. The dealership's youngest assistant, Maddie, lingered by the security desk after the crowd thinned. Her mind reeled, replaying the short cook translating confidently the CEO's quick rejection. Her hands trembled around a file, nerves as tight as the too small blazer she wore. Grantham kept thorough records, but of employees, not visitors. Feeling reckless, Maddie accessed the dealership database, searching Louis Bishop with no ID coming up. Then she scanned the catering sign-in, Bishop, no regular record, an odd aftertaste. She dialed a friend at South Dawes Diner. "Just the new guy, works like mad, keeps to himself," the voice said. "Single dad, lost his wife, always polite." Maddie probed further. What was it about his careful speech, his steady hands, the way he faded until he did? Later at home, Maddie trawled the open records. An old news clipping appeared, medal ceremony, a man in uniform just out of focus. The name recurred on an old military roster. She cross-referenced, then paused. In an official declination letter, U.S. Navy, Trident insignia, Louis Bishop's name declined a consulting role 3 years ago. She swallowed, adrenaline spiking. No cook turned down work like that unless they had another life. That evening, as Louis washed dishes at home, the sound of water masked Sophia's barefoot patter across tile. She tugged on his sleeve, blue horse swinging. "Daddy, are you okay? Did she say sorry?" she asked. He paused, hands dripping suds. "Not yet, kiddo." "Some people need a friend," Sophia said, facial expression earnest in a way only 5-year-olds can be. He set aside the spoon, letting it clatter noiselessly, and just looked at her. A beat passed. Time now stuttered, a calendar tacked to the fridge. Sophia's surgery, 6 weeks circled hard, the cost not yet covered by insurance. Desk stacked high with forms, a red line through payment due by date. He ran a finger down the heavy deadline. That Friday, as dark coiled over the city, the dealership's tow truck rattled up close to his curbside spot. The driver, a man named Cliff, wore a Grantham jacket and a weary patience honed by years facing angry car owners. Maddie, on site, stood a few paces away, hands folded, resolve growing. "Company told me to take it," Cliff said, voice flat. "Don't you think this is overkill?" Maddie questioned, chin raised. "Orders," he shrugged. "Not my call. Lady in charge says it goes, it goes." Maddie squared her shoulders. "You ever wonder why cooks speak 3 languages?" He blinked, mouth opening then closing. Louis watched through the window, jaw working. His phone buzzed, a message offering compensation to accept dismissal from the catering gig. He stared at it, thumb poised. He typed, "No need for payment, but if you need help, I can translate for your international clients." He pushed send, voice and body neutral. On the other side of the curtain, Sophia pressed the wooden horse to the glass. Outside, the truck idled. Inside, relationships shifted quietly, decisively. It was not lost on Miranda oddly that every fix she sent had rebounded. For 2 mornings straight, Louis's car still haunted the dealership lot, the repair bill for the incident with the overseas dignitary grew, and 3 potential clients now insisted on Bishop's presence at every meeting. The company's board wanted explanations for the ongoing public relations hole. In her office, Miranda tore into the latest memo, face tight, words biting. "Blacklist him. I want a note to every gig in a 10-mile radius. Anyone hires this man, they're off Grantham's list. If his daughter's at Willow Lane School, maybe it's too expensive for hospitality families." Her assistant hesitated. "Isn't that?" "Get it done. I'll call the headmaster myself if you're soft on this," Miranda barked, cutting her off. "This isn't amateur hour." Hours later at the downtown bistro near the dealership, Miranda's voice carried without volume a public performance of dismissal. "Competition's tough. If you can't upgrade, step aside. Some people belong behind the counter and I can spot them by their shoes." The staff and a few patrons barely hid smirks. Louis finished his shift, shoulders squared, simply collecting a stray tip left behind. Instead of firing back, he placed his apron down on the granite bar, methodically aligning the ties, a small gesture of finality. Back in the narrow corridor behind the kitchen, Maddie pulled him aside, urgency in her voice. "Mr. Bishop, something's off. It's not normal the way she's targeting you, not after what you did." He didn't break stride. "She's got reasons, doesn't matter, I'm not here for their war." "It's going to get worse," Maddie said, eyes narrowed. "She called the school. Your daughter needs a sponsor to stay. There's talk of moving up the surgery. If you care about your kid, don't just let this go." His hand hovered over his phone as she spoke, tension pulsing in his forearm. He dialed a number anonymous, hard to trace. "This is Bishop. Yes, it's time. Tell them South Dawes understood." He paused, neutral. "Thank you." He hung up fast. Miles away, Sophia sat at her school desk, flanked by 2 nervous teachers. The principal explained softly that sometimes scholarships end early and there would be a letter about it in her next folder. Sophia clung to her blue horse, which felt small in her hand. He should not have made this her problem. 10 days out from the deadline, the boardroom pulsed with quiet anticipation. Miranda had convened the full slate, a rare event reserved for moments of tectonic shift. The walls gleamed, the carpet too plush, and the city crowd below none the wiser to the drama above. Board members, assistants, analysts all called in for Grantham's strategic announcement. At the far end, Miranda sat with deliberate confidence, flanked by her lawyer and COO. Her suit cut perfect lines, but the circles under her eyes gave up secrets she'd never name. The door opened. Louis entered, every head swiveling his way. He wore the same blue shirt, but tonight his collar was crisp, a watch on his wrist, posture more upright than any had seen before. A faint line of a tattoo brushed his cuff, a trident barely visible. Miranda tensed but gave nothing away, voice clean. "Mr. Bishop, here uninvited." "He has the floor," one board member declared, sliding forward an envelope. She froze, but her hand stayed steady on the armrest. "Fine, state your case." Louis slid the sealed document to the center as the room expanded into silence. The chair opened it, reading the majority shareholder list. Those in the closest seats heard the first hitch of an intake. "Who added this name? It's not on my ledger," Miranda snapped, voice frayed. Louis didn't answer. Instead, Maddie addressed the room, holding up her phone. "I cross-checked the registry. Recent change. Majority stake Bishop Family Trust. Grantham's control just shifted. It's all legal." A wave of recognition moved across the older board members. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, color slipping from his face. The chair glared at Miranda. Was this deliberate omission or mistake? Miranda flicked her gaze from Louis to the board and back again, searching for purchase. "These numbers are private. If you want confirmation, check the lists yourself." From his folder, Louis quietly laid out the transfer forms. "You're missing something important," he said, voice even. The youngest assistant, unscripted, raised trembling eyes. "It's true, I pulled records, he's right." Miranda grasped for words, mouth struggling. The room pressed in. "She still needs a friend," Louis said, the words soft against the board's hush. Not a sound. The COO tapped his pen. Maddie looked down. The board chair, for once, watched Miranda and said nothing. Miranda's jaw worked. Who authorized this?" Her voice dropped to nearly nothing. Silence was all the answer she had. Later, when the lists were rechecked, major clients withdrew contracts, one falling domino toppling another. Within hours, emails spread. Within days, Grantham's revenue tumbled by 1/3. Miranda oddly quietly stepped down, her imperatives now mute. 6 months later, on a Tuesday bright with newness, Sophia's desk at Willow Lane held 2 lunch notes. One hers, scrawled with careful block letters. "Let someone else go first today, Daddy." And the other slid in by Maddie, now school parent liaison. "Remember, piano at 3. Louis, steadier now, lines around his eyes softer, walked the sidewalk beside Sophia, her blue horse at her backpack's zipper. "Daddy," she piped, face upturned in the morning chill, "did you make a wish for me last night?" He smiled, clear for once. "Every night, kiddo, and this one came true." The world did not shift with sound or thunder. Sometimes, vindication arrives silent as a friend's hand tapped against yours when the crowd turns away. What matters endures. A daughter's faith, a witness who chooses right, and the fragile, enduring grace of being seen for everything you tried to keep hidden. The plaza by Willow Lane School glinted with dew as early sunlight filtered through branches overhead, dappling the pavement gold and green. Sophia skipped along the path, chattering about her new math game and the worms she'd rescued from the rainy sidewalk before class. Louis held the edge of her backpack, steadying her as she hopped from tile to tile. At the corner, Maddie appeared, tablet in one hand, a to-go mug in the other, scanning through a parent's sign-in sheet. Behind her, a loose cluster of mothers and fathers gathered, their voices threaded with laughter and easy familiarity. It was the kind of social warmth Louis still hadn't taught himself to step into. Maddie caught his eye. "Morning, Chef Bishop, did you see? They repainted the playground horse." Sophia perked up. "It's blue now like mine. I told Mrs. Harrington it should be." Louis grinned, genuine and relieved. Maddie knelt to Sophia's height and pointed. "What wish are you making today?" Sophia pressed the silky blue wooden horse to her cheek, eyes closed. "That Daddy doesn't lose his car ever again, and that Mrs. Audley's mom feels better in her head." Louis felt a small shock at the name, and Maddie paused, exchanging a glance that understood more than words. Louis crouched to Sophia. "That's a kind wish," he murmured. "People sometimes need time to remember what's important." Maddie straightened, voice gentle. "You know, Sophia, it's really brave to wish for someone you don't always like." Sophia shrugged, wise beyond her years. "Daddy says wishes aren't always for us." With a last squeeze, Sophia darted off, ponytail flying behind her, blue horse bobbing at her zipper. Classes started, the playground emptied, and Louis stood for a moment at the fence, watching his daughter find her desk by the window. Across the yard, a man in work clothes was adjusting the new playground horse, bolting a plaque into place. On impulse, half hope, half resolve, Louis made his way over. The man looked up, wiped grease from his hands, and squinted. "You're Sophia's dad, right?" Louis nodded. The man tapped the plaque, which read, "In celebration of second chances for those who make wishes come true." Louis felt his throat close a little. "Thank you," he managed, not sure who the thanks was meant for, the workman, Maddie, or just the morning itself. The man shrugged, straightening up. "She told me about her horse, said even when people break things, somebody always fixes them." Louis ducked his head, a rare smile stretching into laughter he couldn't bottle. He walked home through the bright morning, his phone buzzing with texts not from debt collectors or temp agencies, but from 2 different families hoping for help arranging a translation for the upcoming International Day at the school. Maddie messaged with a link, "Possible catering opportunity. Are you in?" and a half-dozen emoji that made him shake his head in mild wonder. By the time he reached the stoop, a small envelope waited among the bills. He recognized the Grantham crest, the clean font, but this time the paper felt lighter, more forgiving. Inside, a single sheet unsigned. "Thank you for the translation. My father recovered. We are grateful and wish you only good things for your family." Beneath was a simple sketch, a stick-figure family child with a blue horse. Louis traced the lines, a soft ache rising in his chest. He tucked it into the kitchen drawer beside Sophia's old notes and set the kettle to boil. The mailman, seeing him through the glass, waved. "Hey, you got a mention in the PTA newsletter. They said you're the best hot chocolate chef in Dawes." Louis laughed out loud. "Not sure about that," he called through the open window, "but I'll take the shot." As lunches were packed and morning routines re-established, changes unfurled in quiet, persistent ways. Willow Lane added an International Food Day, Sophia helping pick the menu, Daddy's soup, not too spicy. The school scholarship committee met with Louis in person, and after a warm conversation, not a plea, not a fight, Sophia's funding was secured for another year. After the meeting, as Louis walked the hallway, he saw Miranda standing by the doorway, phone in hand, coat gathered tightly at her waist. She was thinner now, hair less severe. Her eyes carried the softened wildness of someone in recovery. She looked up as he approached, familiar stiffness in her posture. "Mr. Bishop." "Miss Audley." There was a beat as traffic passed outside, low and unhurried. She looked at the endless rows of kids' artwork up and down the hall, pastels and pencil sketches and misshapen stars. "They call it restitution," she said quietly, "but that's not what this feels like." Louis slid his hands into his pockets, weighing silence. "I lost a lot," she went on. "Position, certainty, even the shape of my days. The board won't speak to me, my mother. I'm meant to visit her more, I do." He waited. "I wanted to tell you," Miranda tried again, "that I was afraid of failing, of being irrelevant. I lost track of why any of this mattered. When your name showed up, it made me angry, because it reminded me what I used to want before I was frightened all the time." She gestured toward the classrooms beyond. "Watching you, protecting, letting go when you had to, I remembered." Louis listened, quiet and patient, as if de-escalating yet another crisis. Only this time, no threat lingered. She stared at her phone. "I don't expect sympathy, but I hope you know there's one thing I regret most. Not what happened to the company, not even what happened to me. It's that I made your daughter a pawn." He nodded, the words at last making the small, old wound sting less. "You could have ruined me, you know," she said, managing a faint, ironic smile. Louis shook his head. "I didn't need to ruin anybody. Sometimes you just need to tell the truth and let people decide what they want to do with it." Miranda's eyes filled, but she managed not to blink it away. "Your charity arm, Grantham Family Foundation," he prodded, "still does some good. People will remember that part as much as the boardroom." She closed her eyes, breath shuddering. "Maybe I'll finally build something with my name on it that doesn't need to be measured in quarterly reports." Louis watched her walk away, shoulders not quite as rigid, footsteps echoing down the tile. At home that evening, Sophia danced in circles around the kitchen as the radio played Ella Fitzgerald. "Blueberry pancakes for supper," she declared, banging a mixing bowl with triumph. Louis set to work, flour dusting his forearms, clean air easy in his chest. He let Sophia crack the eggs, then fish out the little bits of shell, her giggles echoing off the apartment walls. The blue horse lay beside the whisk, silent witness to their joy. "Want to do wishes before or after pancakes?" he asked. Sophia mused, "After, in case pancakes need extra magic." He ruffled her hair, "Deal." A knock at the door startled them. It was Maddie, cheeks pink from the cold. "Got a spare fork?" she called, holding out a Tupperware of fresh strawberries. As they sat around the battered kitchen table, stories circling, Sophia announced, "Today I wished for Daddy to get happy like in the picture with Mommy, and for my horse to keep fixing broken things." Her voice was solemn. Louis blinked hard. Maddie squeezed his hand under the table, wordless. The community of South Dawes had a long memory, and kindness ran through it like a hidden creek. Once word spread about the blue horse and Sophia's wishes, small tokens began to appear. Gift cards to the grocer slipped into Louis's mailbox, anonymous scholarship boost for the school, envelopes with colored markers, even a note from the city clerk. "Your car's street permit renewed for free, Mr. B." At the diner where he once worked, a new policy, staff meal for family after close. The new manager, a grizzled veteran named Candy, winked when he thanked her. Sophia's blueberry syrup is legendary, you're always welcome. Louis found himself awash in small graces, nothing grand or headline-worthy, just the steady accumulation of goodwill that comes from being for others what you yourself once needed. Summer approached. Sophia's surgery, now scheduled and fully funded, loomed only days away. Louis's nerves stretched taut, though he hid it behind easy jokes and long evenings spent painting in Sophia's art binder. They drew their family, a stick-figure daddy, a mommy with a halo, and a blue wooden horse at the very center. The night before the operation, Louis closed the door to the bedroom and sat in the low lamplight, holding the horse in his hands. It was lighter than he remembered, the paint chipped at the nose, but Sophia's faith in its magic was real as breath. He stroked its flank and quietly, almost shyly, spoke aloud. Help her through, whatever it takes, just stay by her side. Take it from me if you have to, let her wake up smiling. The hospital waited, all white sheets and antiseptic promise. Sophia slid in her bed, horse in her fist, eyes huge but brave. Louis sat beside her, counting breaths, recounting every story she asked. About Mommy the policeman who solved crimes with courage, about Daddy who cooked and translated secret messages, about Maddie the school hero, about the army of helpers hiding in plain sight. Before she was wheeled away, Sophia whispered, Daddy, I gave my best wish to you too. Don't be sad if you have to act strong alone again. Louis pressed his lips to her forehead, pride and ache braided tight. I'm never really alone, Bug, not with you, not ever. Maddie, waiting in the corridor with a thermos of coffee and her ever-present clipboard, hugged Louis fiercely. Half the kitchen staff from the old diner texted, checking in. Don't forget to eat. When she's well, tell her we're saving a booth, and from Candy, miracles come in twos, you're next. Sophia came through with flying colors. It was not painless. There were dark hours watching monitors, holding her tiny hands through the worst of it, but the team was skillful, the funds untroubled by debt, and not once was Louis asked to prove he belonged there. 3 days later, she woke with a smile and demanded pancakes. Louis obliged on a hot plate in her private room, staff pretending not to notice. They ate together as dawn lit up the city, a frame of quiet hope around everything ordinary. Everyone came to welcome Sophia home. Maddie decorated the door with banners. The diner sent a breakfast basket on the house. Even the principal from Willow Lane delivered flowers and a new set of paints. Miranda herself sent a small box, inside a necklace with S and a blue horse charm, no card, just the return address. Sophia twirled, necklace flashing in morning light. Another wish ready, she told her father. Louis, heart full, realized there was nothing more to wait for. He crossed every bridge, stared down every deadline, and found in its place an abundance he'd never believed in. Days passed, filled with new rituals, music lessons, walks in the park, laughter that never sounded tentative. The city grew kinder, or maybe Louis now saw the good hiding beneath the rush. Maddie dropped by often, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to sit on the couch and watch Sophia draw more horses, each swish of blue a mark of memory and defiance. One evening, as twilight burned the western sky, Louis sat under the window, Sophia asleep, Maddie beside him in companionable quiet. She broke the silence. You still keep the old uniform in your closet. He nodded, eyes distant, fond. I do. You know, you could teach self-defense at the school, or language classes. You're good at building trust. Louis smiled, running a hand through his hair. Maybe I will, feels like I'm finally allowed to choose. She leaned against his shoulder. You earned that. You know how many people talk about you at school, all good stories, even the ones you'd rather keep quiet. He let himself believe her. From Sophia's room came a sleepy voice. Daddy, did you wish for something today? Louis called back, yes, honey, I wished for this night exactly as it is. He looked at Maddie, hope unfurling at the edges of his tired heart. I think I'll keep wishing, even when I don't have to. 6 months later, South Dawes built a new community center. At the dedication, a mural spanned the lobby, children and parents, teachers and cooks, all holding hands around a brightly painted blue horse. In the middle, Sophia's block-printed mantra, Let someone else go first today. Louis stood in the crowd, Sophia on his shoulders. Miranda was there too, helping direct parents, chatting over coffee, softer now, more present than she'd ever been as CEO. As the speeches ended, Sophia beamed down at her father, ready to go home. Louis squeezed her ankles, joy uncontainable. Home is wherever you are, bug. He stepped into the streaming sunlight with her, waves of laughter ringing behind. Maddie caught up to them, breathless and laughing. Pancakes tomorrow. Always, Louis promised. At the edge of the square, Sophia laid her blue horse against the new mural, then ran back, light as hope itself. Sometimes stories don't end with thunder. Sometimes they settle, gentle, enduring, impossibly strong, as a wish made every night, kept safe for when someone else needs it more.